we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
Now, back to the After Practice podcast with Lake Lewis.
Welcome, everyone, to another After Practice podcast with myself, Lake Lewis. I greatly appreciate you joining me, as you always do. We have a good time, and we have a lot of good stuff that we're going to talk about in today's broadcast, where it's regarding the Washington Commanders, as always. But guess what? Today, it's going to get a little juicy because a lot of you out there are not happy with the thought of the Washington Commanders trading up in this year's upcoming NFL draft. Well, today I'm going to kind of refute that. I'm going to tell you why I think that they should trade up to get Caleb Williams. And I'm going to say it again. Yes, they should trade up to get Caleb Williams. And I'm going to give you my reasons why in just a little bit. As always, folks, you can subscribe to this podcast on pretty much every major carrier that's out there: Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Google, you name it. The podcast is on there. And if you want to watch it, you can subscribe to this show on YouTube, on the Sports Journey YouTube channel. You can follow me on social media, on Twitter, formerly, it's X, formerly known as Twitter, at Lake Lewis. And then you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Lake Lewis Jr. You can go to sportsjourney.com for a lot more information as far as the podcast, articles that I've written, my stand-ups, my stand-ups on WJLA, Channel 7, ABC Television, and some great work by some of my colleagues who are part of the Sports Journey family. So you can check us out on there. Look. Over the past week, since the Washington Commanders have named their coach in Dan Quinn, the former defensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys, via the Atlanta Falcons, via the Seattle Seahawks, there have been fans that haven't been happy about the hire. Well, I tried to break that down the other day. While I think it could be a good hire, obviously the proof is in the pudding, and we still have to see how the season plays out before we can pass judgment. But today, I want to talk about something that a lot of the fans are talking about, and it's everywhere. It's what are the Washington Commanders going to do in the upcoming NFL draft? Now, we're still a couple months away. The draft isn't until the end of April, but it's going to be talked about quite a bit because the Commanders hiring Cliff Kingsbury, who was recently with USC, as pretty much kind of like an offensive guru for them. Didn't have the title coordinator, but he pretty much was a guy that was, basically instrumental in the development and trying to continue the development of Caleb Williams. Well, as you know, you've heard it from myself, you've heard it from some of the greats in our field, that Caleb Williams is from Washington, D.C. Yes, he's from the area, and he went to Gonzaga High School. Caleb Williams won the Heisman Trophy at USC after transferring there from Oklahoma. And I'm going to tell you why I think that Washington should trade up to get Caleb Williams. I know some of you don't want to do that. A lot of you keep saying, well, you need to keep your draft picks and develop them and not bet the farm for one player where there's no sure thing that player will turn out to be great. Do you know why you guys are thinking that way? If you do think that way, it's because this franchise has been burned so often and been burned quite a bit. This franchise has been snake bit. This franchise has not been able to get out of the way of its own shadow. You go back to RG3, Robert Griffin III. Robert Griffin III had a great rookie campaign. If I'm not mistaken, he was the NFL Rookie of the Year. But we all know about the injury, and we all know how that ended for him and how it ended for Washington, how it ended for Mike Shanahan, the whole nine. Didn't work out the way it was supposed to. I think you have to sometimes sit back and look at things subjectively and say, you know what? That was a bad situation, but that wasn't the norm, the way first-round draft pick quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks in the top 1 or 2, end up turning out. And I thought about this. If you're going to say that about Robert, then you have to pretty much say the same thing about the Indianapolis Colts, because Andrew Luck just unceremoniously packed it in and quit on him. He retired on him pretty much before he even hit his prime. That's not normal either. Most first-round quarterbacks, at least top 5 drafted quarterbacks, the majority of them are serviceable pros. Yeah, you're not guaranteed if you're picking in the top 3 or 4 for a quarterback that they're going to be a franchise quarterback that's on his way to Canton, Ohio. No one's guaranteed that. But the chances that that player has a better chance of having that happen in their career than someone that's drafted in the later rounds is high. And I know a lot of you are going to throw Brock Purdy at me because Brock Purdy's starting for the San Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl, and Brock Purdy's Mr. Irrelevant. He's the last player, or was the last player taken in last year's NFL draft. 2 years ago, excuse me. Brock Purdy is a once-in-a-lifetime situation. It's never happened before. What this guy's doing is a testament to his own hard work. And it's also a testament to being in the right place at the right time. And he's got a hell of a coach in Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan, remember him from his days here in Washington. Kyle Shanahan can draw up plays with the best of them. He's one of the best minds ever in football as far as creating offensive, productivity. That's what he does. That's what he does. You ask anyone who knows him, anyone who's coached under him or with him, they will tell you he just has a brilliant offensive mind. So Brock Purdy's benefiting from that. Jimmy Garoppolo benefited from that before he got hurt. Trey Lance, didn't benefit. They traded him. But at the end of the day, I just named 3 quarterbacks that were all in the same time frame for the 49ers. That tells you that Kyle Shanahan pretty much feels like if you have any kind of talent, he can work with you at quarterback. I'm telling you folks right now, you go back to Washington. They've had Kirk Cousins. They've had so many guys this year, Sam Howell. And all of these guys that I'm going to name showed potential. Didn't show elite status skill sets, but showed potential. The only person that showed an elite status at anything where you could just say he was better than everyone was RG3. His athletic ability on the field was second to none when he was in his rookie year. He did things that had defensive coordinators giving them nightmares. But I'm telling you, you're not guaranteed by keeping draft picks that players are going to turn out. I have a list of first-round draft picks for the Washington Redskins, Commanders, okay? And I want you to listen to these names, and then we'll talk about what did these guys do. Okay, so if you look at these guys on this list, the Commanders, formerly the Washington Redskins, and I'm going to go back to the best one of them all, 2010, Trent Williams, okay? Trent Williams was the first round pick for the Washington Redskins back in 2010, okay? 4th overall pick out of Oklahoma. Trent Williams is a first ballot Hall of Famer, perhaps the greatest left tackle in the history of football. He has a chance to go down as that guy, that dude. No argument as far as what he gave Washington. He was their best player every year he was on the team. Okay. 2011, the 16th pick in the draft, Ryan Kerrigan from Purdue. And Ryan Kerrigan, can't say anything wrong about Ryan Kerrigan. Ryan Kerrigan gave it his all. Ryan Kerrigan was worthy of his pick. No argument. Next pick, 2012. 2nd overall pick, Robert Griffin, quarterback out of Baylor, Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. Robert Griffin had a great rookie campaign and then had his knee go out on him. And he was never the same. As I've said before, this is a situation of just bad luck. And it just happened to be for the Commanders, formerly the Redskins. That's not normal, okay? So that could have been 3 stout first-round draft picks where they would have nailed it. Robert gets hurt. It changes things. 2013, 2014, they didn't have first-round picks. You know why? Oh, we're going to talk about it. Because they traded those picks to move up to get Robert Griffin in 2012. Those picks were traded to the Rams at the time. They weren't in LA then. They were the St. Louis Rams. They traded to them, okay? Now, 2015, Brandon Sheriff. Brandon Sheriff was great when he was in Washington. He was a two-time Pro Bowler in Washington and since has gone on to Jacksonville, and he's a Pro Bowler there. No arguments. Okay. Now things start to heat up a little bit because in 2016, the Washington Redskins drafted at 22, although they had two Pro Bowl receivers already on the roster, and Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson, they still drafted All-American wide receiver out of TCU, Josh Doctson. Okay? And Josh Doctson did absolutely nothing. Josh Doxson's not even in the NFL now. Okay? So first round draft pick that's not on an NFL roster right now, that's called a dud of a pick. Okay? The next year, 2017, first round, picked 17. A lot of question marks over his shoulder at the time. I sat in that media room on draft night at Redskins Park, and there was concern if they were going to do it. But because he was from the area and he was coming from Alabama and he was a hell of a player in high school and at Alabama, the thought was you take a gamble on him and hopefully he gets his shoulder right. And he has. That player is Jonathan Allen. Jonathan Allen has been a stalwart for the Washington Commanders. No issues there. The following year, 2018, pick number 13, Daron Payne from Alabama as well. Daron Payne has been a Pro Bowler and perhaps the team's best defensive lineman over the past 2 years. No problem with that pick at all. Okay? Here we go. 2019, you had two picks in the first round. You had the 13th pick. 2019, you had the 15th pick, and you took Dwayne Haskins, quarterback out of Ohio State. Rest in soul, Dwayne, because Dwayne Haskins is no longer with us, unfortunately. Had a tragic accident where he lost his life. But before any of that happened, Dwayne Haskins was already released by Washington. They let him go because of poor performance on the field and things that were going on off the field. So that's considered, under the circumstances, we're unfortunately talking about a young man that lost his life way too soon. But Dwayne Haskins, from a football standpoint, was a bust for Washington, okay? That same year, you had another first-round draft pick, and there was a 26th pick in the draft, and you took Montez Sweat. And I remember Montez Sweat, there were some issues as far as maybe a heart condition. Montez Sweat had transferred from Michigan State to Mississippi State, had a great, year in the SEC, tormented offenses, and was a sack waiting to happen. But there still were concerns about his health. And that's why he fell low, but Washington took Montez Sweat. They took him. Montez Sweat is no longer with the Commanders either. So you have from that draft, Dwayne Haskins and Montez Sweat. Before Dwayne unfortunately passed, he was released. Montez Sweat was traded. So you have nothing to show for that year. 2020, first round pick, number 2 pick in the draft, Chase Young out of Ohio State. Chase Young's no longer on this football team. Chase Young was the Rookie of the Year, Defensive Rookie of the Year that year, but we're talking about him in past tense because he's no longer on the roster. 2021, Jamin Davis, number 19 pick in the draft, linebacker out of Kentucky. Jamin Davis is struggling to find where is he supposed to fit in. Hopefully Dan Quinn can make Jamin Davis the player that the team thought they were getting when they drafted him. But Jamin Davis has not been what anyone thought a first round 19th pick in the draft should produce. I'm just being honest with you folks here. 2022, from my school, Penn State, Jahan Dotson, 16th pick in the draft, wide receiver. They traded back and still got Jahan Dotson. His first year, last year was his rookie year. Did really well and had people thinking that they have a really nice 1-2 punch between him and Terry McLaurin. Well, after this year, his second year, he struggled. Not sure if it was Eric Bieniemy's offense or what it was. Quarterback situations, always looking for Terry. Not sure what it was, but he was not the guy you saw his rookie year. And he's got a lot of question marks to answer going forward for Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Okay. And then finally, this year's first round draft pick at number 16 again, out of Mississippi State cornerback Emmanuel Forbes Jr. And Emmanuel Forbes struggled mightily this year. Everyone remembers the game against the Eagles and A.J. Brown just destroying them. Everyone remembers Stephon Diggs destroying them. And was he used properly? I said no. I didn't like the way Jack Del Rio or Ron Rivera used him in this system. And hopefully Dan Quinn can find the right buttons to push for the young man, because he is talented. And he proved that when he was in the SEC. But I say all these draft picks, folks, because maybe 4 of them hit on something, okay? And I mean really hit on a first round grade. The other ones, the verdict is out on some still, and the other ones just flat out didn't do it. Some of them aren't even in football anymore. I say this because you guys are out there saying that there's no way that you go after and you try to get Caleb Williams. And I'm saying to you, I've been doing this for a long time, grading players, watching tape, and I haven't seen too many players like a Caleb Williams. And I legit mean that, folks. This guy is special. He's got all the tools that you want from a franchise caliber quarterback. And for the sake of selling tickets and books and things like that, he's from your hometown. He's from DC. Why would you not want to get that type of player when this franchise has been devoid of a franchise quarterback for 30 plus years? I'll go even further. When they won the Super Bowl in 91, that 92 team, 91-92 team, they won the Super Bowl with Mark Rippon. Mark Rippon wasn't a franchise quarterback. He was a quarterback that was on a hell of a football team, and he played great football that year, and they won the Super Bowl, rightfully so. You go back a couple years before that, when they won the Super Bowl in San Diego, when they ran through the Denver Broncos 42-10. Remember, 35 points in the second quarter alone. Doug Williams. Doug Williams wasn't even the starter that year until late in the season. It was Jay Schrader. Doug Williams' best days had been in front of him. They were gone. They were behind him, I'm sorry. But Doug Williams had an all-world game, rightfully, so I still think should have been the MVP. I think they gave it to Tim Smith or whatever, running back, if I'm not mistaken. But Doug Williams wasn't a franchise quarterback. Not at that point in his career, he wasn't. Maybe when he was in Tampa with the Buccaneers in the late 70s, early 80s. But not at that point in 87. Okay. I'm going to say this too. You go back to Joe Theismann. Joe Theismann takes the 81 team to the Super Bowl. They win it over the Dolphins, 27-17. Then they go the following year and play the Raiders and get hammered 38-9. Okay? I'm telling you guys right now, and please don't take this the wrong way, because Joe T is the guy. He's a legend here. Was Joe Theismann a franchise quarterback, or was he just a really good quarterback? See, there's levels to this, folks. I don't know if Joe Theismann would be considered a franchise quarterback. He was very good. Don't get me wrong. He was MVP of the league one year. So if you want to say franchise player, I'm not going to argue and say absolutely no, he wasn't. But I don't know if his full body of work, you can say he was a franchise quarterback. He was a Pro Bowl quarterback at one point. Very good quarterback. But was he a franchise quarterback? That's a subject for another day. I say all this because I don't know if Washington's had a franchise quarterback. You go back to when? You have to go back to maybe Sonny Jurgensen. Have they had a franchise quarterback in the last 30 years? No, they have not. Okay. They've had some guys that probably could have been if they had more time. If the ownership, which was Dan Snyder at the time, didn't run off of Brad Johnson and he goes to Tampa and wins a Super Bowl, maybe so. But we haven't seen one. And the fact that you have a chance to possibly get one and now you guys don't want one because you're saying you don't get rid of your picks. Well, I just went over the first round draft picks, my friends. I just went over those picks. And those picks aren't guaranteed. Hell, some of them aren't even in the league right now. First round draft picks aren't even in the league right now. So again, there's no madness or people are going crazy by saying Caleb Williams should be traded up for, because I'm one of them. Call me crazy, call me mad then. But I think that that's what this team needs to do. They have to do something here. If you're in the camp of keep your picks, then I'm going to say I respect you. I respect that way of thinking. I do. Especially when you're a bad football team. You've got a lot of holes to fill. And I get Washington is just that. They have a lot of holes to fill because they haven't been good. But the biggest hole to fill is a generational talent that's sitting right out there in front of you. And I'm going to ask you this question. You pass on Caleb, you don't move up, and Chicago takes him one, and you decide to take Drake May or Jalen Daniels, and Caleb Williams just looks like a monster in Chicago, and let's just say the Daniels kid or May, they look okay, but it's taking them some time. You're going to hear people saying, man, you could have had Caleb Williams. I know it's hindsight, and you can't see into the future. I get it. But I'm telling you, when you're a franchise that's been devoid of that guy at that position, the number one position in all of sports, and you have a chance to get one who's from your own backyard and who's proven on the scale, on the highest of scales, he's proven his worth. I don't want to hear from anyone that this guy is not good, he's overrated. He was the high school player of the year. Goes to Oklahoma, is the Big 12 freshman of the year. We're not talking about chopped liver here, folks. We're talking about at the highest of every level. High school player of the year in the country out of D.C. Won a city championship in D.C. Okay? Now, he goes to Oklahoma. The Big 12, one of the top conferences in all of football. And he's the Big 12 freshman of the year at Oklahoma. Transfers to follow his coach who got the USC job, Lincoln Riley. He follows Lincoln Riley to USC. He's in Los Angeles, the biggest media market in the world, with a lot of hype put on him to produce. And what does he do? He just goes out and he wins the Heisman Trophy. Folks, all I'm telling you is that to me is an athlete that knows the realm of what he's playing in, understands the pressure that's put on him, understands why it's important for him to just always be that guy, the man. And he's proven that he can be that. So for my money, I'm saying to you, Caleb Williams is the guy that this team needs to get. That's just my spill. Doesn't make me right, but it definitely doesn't make me wrong either. What are your thoughts? Do you want Caleb Williams? Would you trade up for him? Depends on how much. I understand. So I'll tell you right now. Someone asked me this the other day. What would you give up to move up for Caleb Williams if Chicago's willing to do it? I said clearly you swap picks 1 and 2 this year. You give Chicago back one of those second rounders because you inherited one from them when you traded Montez Sweat to them. So Washington has 2 second rounders this year. I would ask Chicago, are you interested in one of those second rounders? And frankly, I don't care which one it is. If it's the higher of the 2 and Chicago wants that, I'm putting it in the package. And then I'm going to ask them, I'll give you a second rounder for next year. And if they say, yeah, it's a done deal. But we know Chicago's going to want a first rounder, another one. So I'm going to say, I tell you what we'll do. You have to be creative here, folks. I'll give you a 2026 first rounder. And I'll give you a 2025 third rounder. Okay? So basically, if you're Chicago, for us to move up to your 1 pick, you're getting the 2nd pick in this year's draft. You're getting one of our second rounders. You're getting a 3rd rounder. And you're getting another first rounder from 2 years later. I'm doing it, folks. Call me crazy. Call me whatever you want. I'm doing it because I just think that this kid has so much potential. And I think he could galvanize this franchise, this fan base. You have a new owner in Josh Harris. You have a new GM in Adam Peters. You have a new coach in Dan Quinn. You have a new offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. And now you have the new defensive coordinator in Joe Witt Jr. I'm telling you, everything is aligned for Washington to finally take that proper step forward and step into the modern age and step into real football, good football, and we're not having to watch this stuff or me cover it, in away games, and I'm seeing better products and better teams and saying to myself, damn, what would that look like in Washington? Because I've never seen it, not consistently. That's why I say you have to make that move if you're the Washington Commanders. You've got to trade up for Caleb Williams. All right, folks, I expect to get some emails and some DMs and some comments for you. Let me know your thoughts. Are you in my camp, trade up for Caleb Williams, or are you in the opposing camp? Hell no, don't trade. I don't want him here. I don't care about if he's weird or whatever. Bottom line is we need our draft pick. So let me know. As always, folks, once again, you can follow me on social media, on X at Lake Lewis, on Instagram and Facebook at Lake Lewis Jr. You can go to sportsjourney.com for more information, as well as you can watch this on YouTube. Okay, so on YouTube, it's under Sports Journey Com on that channel. So appreciate you joining me. As always, we have fun when we talk. It's all love, you know that. And I love that we have differing opinions on things. That's what makes sports so fun. It makes it one of the few things in the world that brings everybody together, especially when teams are winning. And hopefully that happens this year. So have a good one, and we'll see you when we do this again. Take care. The After Practice broadcast is brought to you by Thermopack. Thermopack Mouth Shield, the leading heat-informed athletic mouth guard that changes colors to warn against potential heat-related injury or illness. For more information, you can go to thermopack.com. Sideline Prep. If you're wondering how to become an NFL or NBA cheerleader, Sideline Prep preps like a pro. You can go to sidelineprep.com for more information. And finally, Chill Skins. Customized safety cooling headbands and towels. No refrigeration is needed. All you have to do is wet it and it'll keep you cool all day. You can go to chillskins.com.